just adjust the face real quick. It's pretty close already, actually. There he is. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
Not too shabby. Thanks for coming on again. So our guest, like I said a little bit before, he's been on here a number of times. It's been a couple months though. A lot's changed in the game since the last time you were on. So I'm excited to talk to you about the current stuff going on with the meta and the drafting. So yeah, this is CavalierGuest. Hi.
Hey. Thanks for inviting me on. It's always
yeah.
a pleasure to be here.
No problem. I was just talking about how last week we had Dreadnought on. I don't know if you saw that episode, but if you haven't, you actually should check it out because that guy blew my mind. Him and Saray. I was like, oh, I understand this game in a whole new way now. Like, it was pretty fun.
I mean, that tends to happen when you start talking to people who literally spend 12 hours a day studying the game.
Right. It's their life. Yeah, for sure. But tonight you've picked a couple drafts from recent HGC. You picked one European match and one US match.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one you went with was Fnatic versus Misfits. And was this, let me see, this was game number, Cursed Hollow.
Should be game number 5.
Number 5, there it is, yeah. So game number 5. And this was, obviously, they're going in 2-2, a lot of pressure, tied up. So this is a clutch draft for both teams, and they're both really, really good teams. So this was definitely a good match to watch. I remember sneaking away at work to watch this one. So, yeah. Cursed Hollow, talk to us a little bit about how do you think the Cursed Hollow draft, or rather the Cursed Hollow meta, has changed ever, or is it still emphasis on the same things as it was, say, 6 months ago?
So I actually think that the pro meta for Cursed Hollow hasn't changed in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
There has been, even since like 2014, Abathur was like a really popular, 2014, 2015, Abathur was a big pick on the map.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis has always been on globals and delay and some kind of ability to secure pauses and go for really long, drawn-out fights.
Mm-hmm.
And even, one of the most famous comps of all time, the Cloud9 Undying comp.
Right.
People were talking about that. There was a huge emphasis on the Tassadar and the Brightwing because they weren't really in the meta at the time. And even though the Auric was in the meta, Murky, wasn't. And people are like, oh, it's the Murky comp. And in reality, that was an Abathur comp.
Yeah.
The whole point of that comp was just delay forever.
Mm-hmm.
Get them on our side of the map and keep them there, and Abathur will eventually kill Core on his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, people just get excited because it's Murky, But yeah, Abathur was definitely key there. Now, you probably aren't going to see anything like that on this map nowadays. What do you think do you think that's the same emphasis you'll see in the pro scene now, or obviously we didn't see Murky Abathur stuff, but we did see kind of globals and Undying Heroes.
We've seen globals, we see Undying Heroes. We actually still do see a significant amount of split push heroes. It's considered kind of cheesy, but I believe both of the Asmo picks that happened in HGC this weekend were on Cursed Hollow, and especially with his new talent, Hellish Hirelings. It's essentially like a Merc Lord on your trait, so you can split push with Merc Lord without actually having to have a hero there, which is
it's pretty good.
Huge. I was a little bit surprised that we didn't see any Vikings picks or bans, even in the EU side of things, but it's always been a little bit awkward because you have to draft a significant amount of delay.
Right. They tend to show up on a map like Garden of Terror a lot, although I don't think we saw them there either.
Now, they're in the pro meta. Their top maps are Towers of Doom, Dragonshire.
Okay.
Garden of Terror is not in the pro meta technically right now since it's not in the pool, but Garden of Terror, Sky Temple.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's not even in the map pool. Yeah. So, what kind of I don't know how much you know about the European teams. What kind of stylistic differences do you think there are between these two teams, Fnatic and Misfits?
The entire EU scene is actually just not as aggressive as either the Korean or the NA scenes. We have a lot of NA teams that just thrive on aggression and chaos and diving in and getting kills.
Yeah.
And
Team fighters, yeah.
The overall average, if you go look at the EU meta, the kill count is always significantly lower
Mm-hmm.
in their tournaments.
So,
They really have a huge focus on macro, sometimes even at the expense of going in for team fights, which means that the games tend to be longer. They tend to be more drawn out. They tend to be stronger players on the macro maps. Tomb is an EU special.
right.
Every EU team is good at Tomb of the Spider Queen.
And do you think that's just because they'd like to emphasize the meta of the map more than other regions? Like they like to play. They're not all about brawling, I guess. I mean, of course they fight, but I wonder what makes them want to play that way more than other regions. Personally,
I, I think in a lot of cases it's just a question of value.
mm-hmm.
There's a lot of EU players who look at the game from a very mathematical perspective.
Mathematical.
I mean, Alex the Pro G, for instance, he kind of semi-regularly on Reddit will post breakdowns of talent
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
analyses, and it's like this talent is just strictly better than this one because math, and you can
Right.
see
Right.
his reasoning, and once you see it, if you can execute, it's obviously pretty clear that he's correct.
It doesn't. Being correct doesn't make Americans change their mind, though.
No, it doesn't. Not as a general rule.
Because, like, if you look at Alarak, it's like never ever reduce your sadism on Alarak. It's never going to be worth it mathematically. Like, but that doesn't mean we're still going to do it. Like, so yeah, things like that. And I do agree. Players like Alex the Progi and ADRD made a big showing this past weekend with his Medivh play. Really showed us a different kind of analytical style of play, it's always fun to see, you know.
And E also tends to draft pretty late game comps. They have an affection for heroes that sort of scale better throughout the game. The big one is, we saw Lunara in the EU before we ever saw her anywhere else in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that the Koreans were actually scared when they went to Summer Worlds. They were like, we have never scrimmed against Lunara. We don't know how to deal with Lunara. We're afraid they're going to pick Lunara, and we're going to lose to it because we don't understand how that hero works.
Yeah.
But Lunara is like one of the most late game heroes because her straight scales at 5%, whereas everything scales at 4%. So in the very, very late game, the more levels you have over your opponent and the higher level you are, period, the more damage you are going to be doing by a huge margin. And the reason, relative to the size of health pools.
Right.
And, the reason EU likes those comps is because they are confident they can always get to that late game. They're confident they can play even, is what I like to say. They can play even all the way up.
Right. Yeah, Lunara, I always wondered why Lunara isn't played more, just as far as she's one of those heroes I feel like could be unlocked in the right situation. Like you said, late game, she's really scary. So maybe we'll see some more of her this season, but who knows? Before we get to this draft, I do want to. My lovely co-host Ryan isn't here. I think he's off with his girlfriend or something. I don't know. He's not here. It's we're all very disappointed in him, and I just wanted to. He might be watching or he'll watch the VOD, and I just want him to know that I miss him, and the whole world misses him, really. So yeah, so just wanted to throw that out there. Let's get to this draft. So first ban goes to Fnatic, and they start off with a very interesting ban. They first ban Zeratul. Now, is this something informed by the rest of the series, or do you think it's something else?
I think it was something informed by the rest of the series to a large degree. Misfits did end up picking at Zeratul twice in the series, once on Dragonshire, once on Sky Temple, and they won both times.
Right. And what was Zeratul doing to Fnatic? That was there anything distinct about the Zeratul player? Was it just the Void Prison causing problems, or?
It was mostly the Void Prison causing problems. The big thing about Zeratul is with his new build, he has a lot of displacements. Mm-hmm. He has Warple at 1. He has Seeker in the Dark as a gap closer at 7. Then he has his standard blink out. So he can W in, get poke, blink back out, and then it looks like he's going to secure the kill. He can Vorpal back in.
Mm-hmm.
And because the way Vorpal works, the direction you're facing is the direction you'll be facing when you Vorpal back onto your enemy, mm-hmm. which means if you face away from them, suddenly you can teleport behind them and be body blocking them.
Oh, okay. Kind of like that Valera talent.
So positionally, it's impossible to deal with because he can reappear on any side of you that he wants to, which means he can come in from the bottom, blink to the left, face up, and then come in and he's suddenly underneath you.
Right.
Which means he's just attacked you from like 3 different sides of your model, and he's, maybe he's still there. Maybe he has a path of escape there. In the Sky Temple game, the big thing was the Wombo combo, APOC, with VP. And that's just, VP can do one of two things. It can, or one of three things, I should say. It can enable massive Wombo combos, like just game fight, team fight winning, instant win things. There's no counterplay. There's nothing you can do. If there's a big VP, you're just going to lose that fight.
Right. Classic combos like Ring of Frost and APOC, yeah.
And now Sulfur Smash is the big one. Mm-hmm. That is just, teams have been practicing getting the timing on that, and I don't think I saw a single missed one all weekend. And like teams have been practicing that. It's really strong because Sulfur Smash in the middle does so much damage.
Yes.
Second one is it can negate certain heroics just outright. The big one is Sanctification, which is in the pro meta considered one of the strongest heroics in the entire game. So just being like, no, you don't get that. It's not a thing that happens. It's especially effective in the pro meta because Sanctification tends to be a situation where the entire team is on top of it to like take advantage of it, and then suddenly you have a 5-man VP for free. Right,
everyone's in there, and it's such a huge hinge for the team that takes it. Right, teams that take Sanct in the pro scene count on that spell.
Yeah, they really do
heavily. So, yeah.
And then the third thing is, and this is like the least used scenario for it, but you can use it just to split fights.
Yeah.
If you VP 3 people in and then have some sort of block or CC mechanic like Malfruits to prevent the rest of the team from getting in, now you're in a 5v2 for a little bit.
Which is basically how you're trying to use it in like Quick Match or Hero League, because it requires the least amount of coordination. You just are like, all right, you two are in timeout. Let's try to kill these 3 or something. Yeah. And
something that doesn't get talked about very often at like the casual level of pro is actually cooldowns. Mm-hmm. VP is like 4 seconds. Let's see, 4 or 5 seconds. Actually, I'm gonna go look it up so make sure I get it right.
I think it's 4.
But I think it's 4.
Yeah.
I think at one point it was 5 seconds.
Oh, it's 5. Wow. Okay.
Yes, it's a long time. So you think about the average cooldown in the game. It's like 7 or 8 seconds. CCs tend to be a little bit longer. They tend to all be over 10.
Yeah.
But a lot of damaging abilities are sub that. Kael'thas's Flame Strike is like 8.
Mm-hmm.
If you blow all your abilities, VP the enemy team, their abilities aren't cooling down and yours are. VP can essentially give you a full second rotation of all your abilities.
Right. Your normal spells, yeah.
And that's just, if it had no other synergies at all, that alone would be enough to make it one of the best heroics in the game.
Right.
Because being able to use your cooldowns twice in a team fight when the enemy team's only been able to use theirs once is just a huge difference.
Big deal, yeah. I actually never thought of that. That's true.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see it in team fights. They'll just be like poking, and suddenly the Zeratul will say, "Oh, I'm in position," and your team will just unload everything, and then he'll VP.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time the VP ends, all their stuff will be up again.
Yeah, that's an aspect of Void Prison I never thought about, but yeah, totally true. So moving over to the Misfits ban here, they do a guy. He's never going anywhere. He's always going to be around. His ETC ban.
He could get nerfed into the ground. You never know.
He could. He's escaped it for years though, and I love playing. I think he's just a good hero. I think ETC is the hero. Balance-wise and mechanics-wise, all heroes should try to be designed like. He's strong. He's never useless. You don't always want him, but you're never gonna kick him out of bed either, like kind of thing. I don't know. I like ETC as far as a design standpoint goes.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I share a bed with the giant cowman. That's fine. I just said it publicly. It's on the record. Do you have any insights about ETC here, or ETC in the current meta as opposed to past metas?
Even with the buffs to Diablo, there's really been 2. They're called control tanks by most teams. Muradin and ETC are considered the control tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Because they both have the mobility to be where they need to be. They both have a stun. They both have tools that allow them to keep people in place. In Muradin's case, it's a slow. In ETC's case, it's, you can face melt people into things. You can face melt people off of things.
Right.
And they both have survivability to get away with that kind of aggressive play. They can go in, control things, and not die. EDC is a little bit more fragile in that
Yeah.
regard, but his self peels a little bit better because Face Melt is better, whereas Murden has Avatar and can do a little bit more damage.
Right.
So there's these trade offs, but they both kind of fill that same niche in a lot of pro teams' minds. Every other tank, you have to draft around some deficiency that they have. Like if you have a Diablo, he's not going to be able to do the mobile ward thing, so you need to draft a vision mechanic. We'll see a lot of Medivh or Tassadar because Oracle gives vision, Medivh's bird form gives vision.
Right.
Or we'll see like a Brightwing for the reveal at 4 on her trait. And just little tiny things.
Little things, yeah.
Tyrael, great mobile ward, no stun. You'll often see him drafted either in with heroes that have their own lockdown, or you'll see him drafted in hyper mobile comps but to enable team mobility so that lockdown ceases to matter.
Right, right.
It's like you can't lock us down because we're moving too fast. You're not going to hit these shots. You're just not going to be able to continually keep focus fire because you can stun us for like a second and then we're out.
Right, right. Now, ETC, however, speaking of those two main tanks that have been around forever, ETC obviously still a high priority. Murden seems to have dropped off a good bit in the pro meta. What do you think the difference is?
Well, actually, in the Gold Club World Championship is when Murden started to drop off, the tournament that was held. And basically people were just drafting Murden to draft Murden.
Right, because
they're
just used to it.
And there were some elements there. One of them was the huge prioritization of Tychus. And for months in Korea, it had pretty much been established that Tychus was a hard counter to Murden just because Avatar suddenly doesn't give you that extra survivability, and you need it. It's a requirement.
Yeah.
It's what makes Murden in some ways. I mean, you could jump out and take Third Wind, and you'd be back in a few seconds, and his trait would expire, but then it's still pretty rough. But more than anything, it was ETC's rework that made Stage Dive a viable heroic. Moving Echo Pedal to 7 meant that ETC suddenly had global soak potential, which on so many maps means he's just freely pushing a lane, getting free wave clear. And he can come to the fight whenever he needs to. And not only can he come to the fight whenever he needs to, but he can immediately power slide on top of a heavily slowed target right afterwards. And if your team's like backing up or contesting a point, it's really easy to aim Stage Dive.
Yeah, especially after 20. then it's really easy.
Yeah, especially in like really narrow corridors, which Cursed Hollow is, of course, like just full of.
Right. And Stage Dive and Mosh Pit have a good tension between them now. There's obviously still a lot of times that teams are going to take Mosh Pit. And before it was like you would take Mosh Pit no matter what, even if they had plenty of stops, and you still can because of the threat of Mosh Pit. But now, since the ETC rework, there's a lot of split soak viability for ETC. So I see that's probably what propels him a little bit over Murden in these teams' minds. So
it really is.
Yeah. Okay. So first pick coming out from Fnatic is the Ragnaros. So tell us what do you think of Ragnaros, and we haven't talked since he's been out, so tell us what you think.
Ragnaros is busted.
Yeah.
Ragnaros is one of the most ridiculously strong heroes just in the game. And a big reason for that, like a huge part of it, is takeover, right? Molten Core.
Right.
The fact that you essentially have something close to a heroic all the way from level 1 to level 9 and the enemy team doesn't gives you
right. It's a
really
very
crazy early game.
Very powerful spell to have right out of the gate. Yeah. His armor at 13 also is catching fire talent. He's shockingly tanky. Obviously, all frontline heroes have some sort of tanky power because they have to. But his is surprising because he doesn't look like, when you're fighting him in the early game, he seems pretty squishy, and then suddenly he's just not squishy anymore. So it's definitely a big power spike when he gets that talent.
Yeah, he gets a ton of healing at both 4 and 7, really, because you get the resets on your Q, and we're in a melee meta, right?
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of teams take 3 melee heroes pretty consistently,
Which
but always,
I like.
always 2. You're always gonna have at least 2 melee heroes, unless you just fucked up your draft and lost because you accidentally went triple range.
Right.
Triple range competitive still has a 0% win rate, by the way, for the record. Put that out there.
That doesn't surprise me a bit, honestly.
Still has not won a game.
Yeah.
Since the scaling changes, basically.
Right.
And when you have that reset and it's a 2-second queue and you're just getting all of that healing, and then if you get focused, and generally focus comes from stuns, you have Resilient Flame at 13. And I actually think Resilient Flame might be so strong that if there's just like a stun on the enemy team, it might be the best talent at that tier. Certainly if there's 2. Even if they're on the same hero. So if you have like an EDC and he takes Mosh Pit, you go Resilient Flame 100% of the time. Is it just Power Slide and Mosh are both stuns.
It activates just on stuns?
It's just on stuns.
Just on stuns, okay.
Unlike most talents that are like stuns or roots, but it's 50% instead of 25. So 50% less damage for 3 seconds.
That's crazy, yeah.
I think you can't focus him. Like you can't focus him with stuns, so you have to like poke him down.
You know who needs that talent is Zul'jin. His Voodoo Shuffle. His Voodoo Shuffle is just slows and roots, I think. And it's like
and it just removes them.
It's like
and it's on a cooldown. It's not like all the time.
Yeah. So he could use
that'd actually be a pretty interesting passive talent. Just like cannot be slowed.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Could still be stunned and rooted, but he can't be slowed. Yeah. Don't draft Jaina. But yeah. I did want to point out something with the Zeratul pick or ban real quick. Since this game, I believe, since the Valeera patch, Vorpal Blade is bugged now. I read earlier.
Yeah, Vorpal Blade is currently bugged to only have the range of his normal blink. So if you're not in range of the target in Vorpal, you'll just do blink that distance towards them, and then if it's not close enough, you won't get there.
Kind of that has
been acknowledged as a bug by Blizzard. They are fixed.
All right, so it might be fixed as early as tomorrow. Yeah. So just pointing that out, that if you're going to hop on your Zeratul today, you might want to take a different talent for now. Okay. So, yeah, Ragnaros, he was all over this tournament. There was a game on Infernal Shrines where they basically recreated me falling out of love with Kerrigan in one game, because I had been playing Kerrigan on Infernal Shrines still, and I was like, why is she so bad now? And then I realized it's Sulfuras Smash is why she's bad now. So that happened to a couple teams where Kerrigan on Infernal Shrines would get just annihilated by Ragnaros. And he's just such a good hero on every map almost. I mean, yeah, every map. There are maps he's less good on, but he's still great. Yeah. So Ragnaros' first pick makes sense, and then we have a power combo coming out from Misfits, an old classic, Tassadar and Vala.
Yeah, and this is one of those combos that was banned, basically. I think the rest of the set, I don't think Tassadar was let through the ban phase at any point. And it really is so incredibly hard to deal with, because you have Call's Embrace. I mean, obviously not anymore, but you had Call's Embrace, which means everyone gets free bonus health at the start of every fight. You're going to pick him up. It's not guaranteed you're going to pick him up with another support, but because he used the only region that will actually run solo support Tassadar sometimes. Yeah. But you're usually going to pick him up with another support, which means that in addition to the shields, you have real healing, and then you have leeching, and it becomes very difficult to burst out any hero because of shields. Shields are actually, Tassadar shields at the time were actually the largest non-heroic heal, quote unquote, in the game. They're bigger than Uther's Flash of Light, which is or Holy Light, which is on a 12-second cooldown. Right. It's bigger than that.
And they keep on you, yeah.
And it was 5 seconds, and you get to maintain half of it.
And they give you health when you attack.
Yeah, and they give you leeching. Yeah.
So yeah, pretty good spell.
Pretty insane. He has vision. He has wave clear. Cursed Hollow has lots of tight chokes. Forest Wall gives you all sorts of control over tight areas, either for engaging or disengaging or preventing chase, whatever. Splitting up team fights, which is something we talked about with Zeratul. Splitting team fights at the very, very high end of play is something that is significant, and people will practice it. I know whenever a new hero comes out that has like any sort of displacement abilities, people will go into like custom games on each individual map and look at all the areas where fights normally happen and see if there's anything wonky they can do, any weird splits that they can make happen.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think of Tassadar now? His rework?
I think it's awful.
Do you?
I do.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I've been playing him and he feels good to me. But
So the problem with Tassadar's rework is he doesn't have damage with his Storm anymore. His Storm actually used to be like reasonable poke. You couldn't just stand in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you still can't stand in it, but also if you don't stand in it, it basically does no damage. They lowered the damage enough that as long as you're not in it for the last 3 ticks, you're not on it for the back half.
Mm-hmm.
It tickles. So you just move out of it.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of games where Tass is top damage, and Grubby had one on PTR where he did like 140k damage. And if you go watch the actual video, he literally had 3 people who were literally standing in his storms for the full duration every single time.
Right. Now,
which is nuts. Like who just stands there?
PTR people, man. But I feel like his wave clear improved because of it, though. That 1,000 stacks. That 1,000 stacks is so easy to get. It's like,
on
cake.
On PTR, his wave clear was actually worse.
Is it?
It was less damage overall.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a placebo. Maybe it's in my head. But to me, he feels better. I don't know.
Yeah, it's objectively less damage.
No, I believe the numbers are there as far as the wave clear goes. But I mean, overall as a hero, to me, he feels. I like Archon a lot now. I think it's much better. I mean, the slow. I mean, the fact that you can dimensional shift after you Archon makes him a lot more interesting to play. I don't know. I'm for Tassadar. I mean, I think he needs to be tweaked his numbers a little bit, but I like the way they are going with it, I guess I should say. He seems like a much more active hero.
I don't know. I mean, there's multiple times now where you have a 30-second cooldown that's not available, 15 to whatever second cooldown depending on talents. I don't remember what the new default on Oracle is. Mm-hmm. And then you have 2 8-second cooldowns. So in a lot of cases, you're in a situation where you actually have everything on cooldown and you're just standing there and you can't even stutter step.
Yeah, it's true. You can't stutter step. Yeah.
So I think he's less interactive. There's lots of times where I played him on PTR a ton to like really evaluate him. Uh-huh. And there was lots of times where the best thing I could do was literally nothing.
Right.
I would just sit there and do absolutely nothing.
I guess I can see that. Yeah.
Until the globe quest is finished, which is pretty harsh.
Yes, 40 is
20 globes is a lot of globes, especially on some maps.
20 is a lot. 40 is preposterous.
I couldn't even pre-shield people, right? I was literally in a lot of cases just doing nothing, and it was the best thing I could have been doing. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, you could always be aggressively scouting, especially post 13, 16. You could be thinking about skill shots and like who's going to take the most damage, and can I be physically in the way? Do I have enough healing? Who do I shield? I want to position aggressively for this force wall. And he's so fragile, and his E nerfs and the removal of the talents were so significant that he can't be that aggressive anymore. He's basically a backline shield bot, except his shield's on an 8-second cooldown instead of a 5-second cooldown, and he can't be played aggressively because if you're standing still and auto attacking as Tassadar, I mean, you can stutter during Archon, I guess that's about it.
Yeah.
At a high end of play, people will just kill you because stationary targets are easy to hit skill shots on.
Yeah. Now, that's all well and good, but old Tassadar, the fact that there's this hero who, this is just the hero that can't die. Like, that's something had to be changed.
There's a balance. There's a balance there between like making him competitively useless and making him unkillable in an average game.
Yeah. Nah, I think he'll end up in a good spot. I do agree that maybe he needs a little more power, but I think their idea of what to do with Tassadar is a good one, personally.
Although I'd point out that Medivh is just as unkillable post 16 if you play him really, really well.
Yeah, he is. But like that's his whole.
The skill cap is way higher.
Yeah, he you have to be really good with him to do that, and that's kind of more his. I guess Tassadar and Medivh are kind of similar in their intent as far as a hero design. A little different, little tweaks on the spells, but yeah, I get that comparison for sure. All right, so Vala obviously. Just strong with Tassadar, a great range carry. Nothing too different or weird going on there. So the next 2 picks coming out from Fnatic is going to be Brightwing on Smexy and Muradin as the tank. What do you think of the early Brightwing here?
I think the early Brightwing is fine. Brightwing plus Tassadar is one of the strongest duo support comps in the entire game,
Mm-hmm.
and big maps are just one of Brightwing's strongest areas. So they don't want to ban Brightwing, right? There's too many other high
Right.
value
Mm-hmm.
options available for supports, including Malfurion, if they wanted to do healing over time, plus burst mitigation from Tassadar. If they want to do some kind of lockdown thing with roots as a follow up, like they can't afford to ban a support because there's too many good options.
Right.
But they don't want Brightwing to go through. Also, in general, most teams, pro teams, are going to want to draft at least one global on Cursed Hollow because you don't want to get stuck in a situation where, oh, my opponent has like a Zarya with grenades and she's just lobbing them onto the tribute point, and like we cannot cap it, but we also, have to be here. But
Right.
because as it's five, but their global still slow pushing, they just don't want to put themselves in that situation. So you always want to have one global to avoid that sort of dynamic evolving into the draft. Um, and
Yeah.
like, what are the other options really?
For a
They
healer
apparently they're planning on for globals. They're
for
planning on banning the
globals.
Haka.
Mm-hmm.
They could have picked up Falstad, but that's picking up their ranged relatively early.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking,
Uh.
your ranged aren't that important. There's lots of heroes that do damage from range. There's just a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you want a specific one for like a specific strategy, but more often than not, you're pretty
Yeah.
happy to get whatever
You don't have to
range you end
prioritize
up
that
with,
in a draft.
unless you're going for a specific synergy like the Vala Tastar. So they pick up the Brightwing
Right.
primarily for the global and to deny the Tastar because they're not going to use their ban isolating the support pool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all the global, except for, I guess, Zagara. I think that's all I can think of.
I think, if you count Medevac and Abathurs,
Medevac,
there's
sure.
eight.
Mm-hmm.
If you count Hunt, Stage Dive, but
Yeah.
the pool's fairly limited. There's not that many globals in the game, despite that.
No.
Despite the fact that it seems like for a long time we had a global meta
Yes.
where everyone was always a global. It turns out there's not that many of
And
them.
it's still there in a way. It's just not the thing, but it's still definitely a priority. Okay. So what are Misfits tank options here?
Their tank options, and actually, this is an area where I'm interested. They don't have a control tank option ref because it's just murder and EDC.
Mm-hmm.
They have an option for Diablo. They could go, deep. The problem with Diablo is that he's a dive tank.
Right.
He's gonna go in. That's the only way he can do anything. And he's really vulnerable to poke. His main survivability mechanic is having a really, really high health pool at 100 souls.
Right.
And in the late game, that makes him extremely vulnerable to Tychus, who's still on the board. Fnatic could still pick it up. And to Ragnaros, because he has 9% damage on his Q
Right.
at 16, which is
crazy. Yeah.
it's a lot. Like, in addition to the damage it already does, that's a significant amount of his health pool.
You know,
And
you know who has the craziest health pool damage right now is Diablo. Oh my god, devastating charge! Like when
Yeah.
you finish that quest, like a Muradin jumped in on me the other day and I slammed him into two walls and I was like, oh, I killed Muradin. I was like Lenny in Mice and Men. I was like, oh, I accidentally killed him. I was just trying to play, and like it's insane. So yeah,
there's even some good spots on some maps where you can take domination at 16.
Oh yeah, I always do.
And double it up.
Yeah.
So like on the Dragonshire bot shrine, you can just straight up do like more than 30% because it's the base damage plus 15 plus 15%. Like,
yeah, I take domination every game. Every game I play Diablo, I just love that. I don't know if it's always the best, but it's just so fun to bully them around like that. So
I think it's a pretty insane talent. You will run into mana issues if you're using it consistently. If you didn't take Devil's Due at 1,
mm-hmm.
but for most people,
I do. Yeah,
they don't really keep track of that sort of thing, so it's not that big a deal.
I take Big Devil's Due anyway because that spell is that talent is also crazy.
It is. It's insane. At full souls, globes now heal for 36% of your health pool.
That's so much.
Which means like on Infernal Shrines, you win the objective. Suddenly, you get 72% of your health back, and
you're all good. Yeah, ready to go. All right, cool. Just sorry for the Diablo divergence there. I just really like that hero. He's fun to play. What did they go with next? So, they're going to ban now.
So we're going into ban phase next. Misfits ban. They end up banning Falstad again, limiting the globals. This is also to some degree a targeted ban. Quacknix is one of the best Falstad players in the world. He really likes playing Falstad. He's really good at it. Even in the one match they won against Ballistics at BlizzCon, Quacknix was on Falstad.
Mm-hmm.
Quacknix has a really good understanding of Falstad's talent tree. Sometimes it's better to go like Seasoned Marksman plus Boomerang because you get more reliable auto attack damage
Right.
for very mobile heroes. And they're going for Misfits. They don't know this, but Fnatic doesn't. They're going for a relatively mobile comp, which means that Quacknix would easily be able to make that adjustment and still do a significant amount of damage. So they're like, it's a global. It is one of his best heroes. It's really good. It's a really good map. It gives him boss control.
Yeah.
In the late game on Cursed Hollow, bosses tend to be the actual win conditions. So having boss control heroics is critical. You always want at least one in most ideal drafts. It's just there were so many factors. It was just like, let's not do. And they haven't picked up the ranged yet, right? So they have their bruiser, their support, and their tank. They're missing a flex and a ranged, and that's it. So flex can be almost anything, but obviously banning a range is the best thing you can do. So what's the worst range? Falstad was the clear answer.
Right. Now, if I'm sitting in Fnatic's seat, I'm worried about Zarya here, quite frankly. Just because, like you said, the boss steals with Expulsion Zone, the extra shielding, just her all-around power. That's what I'd be worrying about, but they go ahead and ban Dahaka. Again, global is probably the priority there.
I'm a little bit surprised by the Dahaka ban.
Are you? Yeah, it's
primarily because you're not. I mean, globals are annoying, straight up. But you have Brightwing? Are you that scared? Because you're going to be able to pretty much neutralize Dahaka's push with the Brightwing. Brightwing's wave clear is a little worse, but her sustain is in some ways a little bit better because she doesn't have to. Like Dahaka doesn't want to burn his essence before a team fight, so he's not going to use his sustain in lane. Whereas Brightwing can just sit there and it's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Also, with Ragnaros, I don't think I would ban a stun under any circumstances.
Right, because that just
because Resilient Flame is so nuts at 13.
That's true. It's true. Now, one thing to be said for Dahaka here is he if you play him in that style, he does have like a Vikings-esque split soak ability. You know, like he can really soak empty lanes and off lanes. Maybe they were just worried about not having the presence in every lane all the time or something and getting behind. I don't know. Just a possibility for part of their reasoning, but you know.
And I was a little surprised when they did it. I'm still like looking at the draft. I'm still a little surprised. They have Dahaka is relatively immobile. Rag has good mobility. Brightwing has good mobility. Murden obviously has good mobility. They would have been able to run rings around him. Brightwing with the nerfs to her other 7 talents opened up cleanse as a viable option. So Brightwing can take cleanse now, whereas before if you had Brightwing, you just couldn't take cleanse. You were never going to take cleanse on Brightwing.
Right.
But now it is an option. I was surprised. I did not expect the Dahaka ban. I think they might have overemphasized the risk in some ways of globals, considering you just need to tie, right? If you have equal numbers of globals, you're going to have equal numbers of delay and push, and it's fine.
Right, totally. Yeah, it's a little bit definitely surprising to a degree, but it's also not terrible. You know, it's also like, yeah, that's a good hero to not have to deal with. So
it is, and it's probably, if you're not thinking too hard about it, in some ways, it's the top melee hero left.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have Alarak and Thrall and stuff, but
yeah, Alarak's not usually considered good right now just because of the prevalence of Double Warrior. He seems to really struggle against that, even though he has a reasonable health pool. His E doesn't actually heal him for very much, so his sustain is somewhat limited. He can lose the soul lane against a variety of popular meta heroes, although he does hard counter some of them. So it's like Alarak's okay.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen him like at all in competitive.
Do you think he'd be too strong if he could use his Lightning Surge against minions?
He can use Lightning Surge against minions.
Well, and it heals him?
It does.
It does?
It just heals him for less.
Oh, it heals him for less. Okay. Well, if it was the same, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, if it was the same, it'd be nuts.
Would it? Okay. I haven't played him a whole lot, so.
So yeah, the way Lightning Surge works is it deals damage and to an enemy and all enemies between Alarak and his victim. Maybe it is only heroes.
I think it's only heroes. Pretty sure.
Okay, 75. Let me go look.
Yeah, check it out real quick.
75% of the damage dealt to enemy heroes. You're right. Is returned to self.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point. If he had
just a little lane sustain, you know.
If he had lane sustain, I think that would actually be a significant buff for him. I think that would be reasonable given where he is right now.
Yeah. I mean, obviously
that would make his E talents pretty insane.
Right.
Though, and his E talents already have relatively high win rates.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a decent idea to try out, just because I feel like that's why people don't pick him, because they're like, this thing is supposed to heal me and it doesn't. Yeah.
You could be like half. If it did like half of the healing.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, something that ended up averaging slightly less than Thrall's level of sustain, since his wave clear is technically slightly better.
Right.
And his mana efficiency is a little bit better. I think that would actually be good.
It'd be cool to have another assassin who could solo sustain besides Thrall. That would make an interesting draft dynamic, I feel. But we're theory crafting, so Misfits here, they do pick up Tyrael. How do I spell it? There it is. Tyrael and Rhaegar. Rhaegar, yes, there he is. First tell us about Rhaegar currently since his rework.
I mean, well, he got which rework? He got a rework not too long ago that turned him into an absolute beast.
That one.
And he got immediately nerfed afterwards. He was basically 1v1ing people with bite. And then they buffed Bloodlust significantly after that recent round of nerfs. Mm-hmm. Bloodlust now has baseline Life Leech, whereas before it was only a level 20 upgrade.
30%, right?
Yeah, it's 30%, and the upgrade now buffs it to 60%.
Wow.
So that's a lot of healing if you draft an auto attack comp.
When Zul'jin came out, it actually shocked and alarmed me how much Rhaegar destroys that hero. Rhaegar does not care about Zul'jin. He will just run up, put on his lightning, bite him, and kill him. It's insane. It's insane, and just slow him down. He's not getting away. So if you're trying to draft a support and they have a Zul'jin, definitely consider Rhaegar. Consider Rhaegar all the time, just because he's really good right now. Good hero to learn if you're learning supports. So
yeah, and Rhaegar actually doesn't get talked about, but it has a pretty flexible talent tree.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, we've seen Bakery, for instance, really take Hunger of the Wolf at 16 a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You deal every time you bite in your wolf form, you do 5% of the target's maximum health as damage, and heal yourself for 5% of your maximum health.
It's good.
It's surprisingly good against certain heroes like Muradin. We didn't see it in this game.
No,
his Lightning Shield talents are after the nerfs are pretty lackluster, but if you have an Illidan or a Chen or any other hero on your team who's especially sticky and can really get on top of a target but maybe lacks a little bit in the kill potential department, it will actually add a ton of damage because they're constantly on top of the target. You're going to get all the value out of Rising Storm, which is currently very difficult to do. Right. He has wave clear and objective clear with Lightning Bond. You can draft him on BOE or in Shrines, and suddenly you've one other hero on the Shrines and he does a ton of damage, does a ton of damage to the Immortal with that double Lightning Shield.
Yeah.
He has a lower cooldown healing totem at 4, so he can pick up another heal if he needs to, which is something we see pretty frequently, actually, because his Q is on such a long cooldown.
And it's 7, the one where the bites reduce your cooldowns? Is that
that's Blood and Thunder.
Blood and Thunder, yeah.
7. Although in competitive, we pretty much only ever see Cleanse.
Right.
Earth Shield at 13 gives him a burst heal on a single target, essentially, with Light Shield. So now you can have 3 heals plus Ancestral, or 3 heals plus Bloodlust, which gives you Life Leech, which stacks with Tassadar's Life Leech if you have the Tassadar.
So looking at that, that's exactly what they have over there, right? This Vala is extremely well supported.
Yeah,
Tassadar
that Vala is never going to die.
No. Yeah, it would be really hard to die with her.
In fact, I think, let me look at I have the stats up here. Did Darkmock ever die? No, he did not. He had 0 deaths.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. Game 5. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, so I guess that was kind of the plan here. Vala obviously is a great hero to empower. She let me ask you something that I think maybe people watching who are going to watch the VOD later would want to know. When do you want an auto attacker versus when do you want a mage?
That's actually a really good question.
Yeah.
You almost always want an auto attacker, to be honest.
And there's not that many in the game, so
there's a few, but what you're looking for in a draft, in the majority of cases, is at most 1 mage, unless you do something really crazy and go 3 mages. We've seen occasionally comps like that. The problem is, if you have more than 1 mage, their damage is all ability based. It's all cooldown based. If your cooldowns aren't up, your damage isn't there.
Right.
So in order for multiple mages to be good, you have to have all of your abilities going on the same target at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you back up and you wait for your cooldowns to come back, and then you re-engage and you try and get all your abilities on the same target at the same time, and then you back up and then you wait. If you don't have auto attack heroes, particularly ranged auto attack heroes who can just do constant, consistent damage, you're going to see situations where someone absorbs all those cooldowns, or one person steps in and absorbs half of them. There's two heroes that are really low, and no one dies, and they just back up, and they get healed up by their support, and they come back in, and you're essentially trading cooldowns. But healing in Heroes of the Storm is so high for most supports that trading cooldowns like that is inefficient. The support will eventually win.
Very frustrating for a Leeming player to be in that situation where you just can't get that reset. Yeah.
Yeah.
And having a Vala, a Raynor, a Tychus, someone like that really helps with that. So.
It does. So if you have one mage and the rest are auto attackers, you're in good shape. Again, occasionally see comps that are gimmicky, like triple mage.
Right.
And sometimes they win games, sometimes they lose games. Right. It's not like a secret strategy that works all the time. It's very hard to execute.
It's a cheese. Sometimes they win. Yeah.
Yeah. It's essentially it's a cheese. Is a good way of thinking about it. Yeah. So you always want some sustained damage dealers. And you really, unless you go 3 mages or 4 even, you don't want more than 1.
Right.
So in an average draft, that means you're going to have at most 1 mage and a tank and a support, and you got to fill the rest with auto attackers. You have to.
Right. And that's why I'm glad Zul'jin came out, because actually that pool was honestly, it was pretty slim. There was like 4 or 5 true auto attackers. Now we have Zul'jin, so there's a little more.
I mean, there's a little bit more than that, but
Raynor, Vala,
there were some viable ones, I think is the difference.
Tychus, who else?
Falstead.
Oh, yeah, but nobody did that. Yeah, I know.
Sergeant Hammer.
Hammer, sure. Kind of.
Greymane.
Yeah, I'm glad Greymane's back, by the way. That's one of my favorite heroes. And he's not back like he used to be, but he's playable, which is good.
Zarya is technically a ranged auto attacker?
Technically, yeah. I don't know if I'd call her that, though. Although she is everything. She does it all.
Yeah, she's one of the most flexible heroes in the entire game.
Yeah.
But it's like Zul'jin did add to the pool.
But like he's a true ranged auto attacker, like that's what he does. So yeah, let's see. Fnatic rounding out their comp here with a Medivh pick, oh baby, and a Tychus.
Yeah, these fights are just never gonna end. Actually, we didn't go over the Tyrael from Misfits.
Oh, that's right, we didn't. I'm sorry. Yeah, we went over how well protected Vala was, but you're right. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're adding to it. Now they're adding additional shields from Righteousness, although they aren't that big. Mm-hmm. They're adding Sanctification, which is ridiculously strong. It's just still one of the strongest strokes in the entire game.
Linchpin ult, yep.
They're also adding significant slows from both Eldrain's Might and Imposing Will at 13. And, there's only so many slows you can add. But if you have both slows and speed enhancers, your team's always going to be the more mobile team. Right. And Tyrael just sort of automatically gives that to you in a lot of ways, because Smite increases the speed of your team, and Eldrain's Might and Imposing will slow down the enemy team, so you're just automatically faster. Which is why we frequently see Heraldic Reforging at 4, or the Smite talent. It's like always one or the other. Right. Pretty much in competitive play, the other 4 talents just aren't even considered. You always want to make your team faster, slow down the enemy team more.
And besides Sanct, the movement speed is the reason teams take Tyrael. It's a huge part of it, like why he's picked, is that Smite speed, for sure. Yeah,
he's the best team-wide mobility enabler in the game.
Yeah. Now, I have a question. What happens when you Holy Ground a Medivh portal? Like right on it?
If you're right on top of it, they can't quite click in. It's just a little bit out of range, but if you're not perfectly centered, it doesn't work. They can still walk around and click, but you can also just make sure you're doing it on a far side. Right, and then they have to walk around the Holy Ground.
What happens? What happens if the Holy Ground's on the portal exit?
It doesn't matter. Both. Oh, if they are on the portal exit, and they
does it just shove them out?
They get knocked off. It's kind of like an expulsion zone.
Okay, gotcha.
Except it doesn't do damage.
Right.
And then, of course, Holy Ground, as long as we're talking about it. We talked about earlier how on Cursed Hollow, the bosses end up being the actual win conditions
and the boss,
for the map. Mm-hmm. So this is actually Tyrael's best map.
Yeah, yeah.
Tyrael's really not bad on any map, but this is his best map overall. And it really does come down to the fact that Sank and Holy Ground give you such insane boss control that you're pretty much guaranteed to win the late game unless you make a mistake.
So you're on Cursed Hollow, and you can only have Tyrael or Zarya. Who do you choose?
Tyrael.
Tyrael? Okay. I don't know, man. I like Zarya.
I mean, it might depend on the rest of my comp.
Right,
But
right. Well, of
for
course.
an average draft, I would take Tyrael.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, let's get into this Medivh Tychus here.
I actually don't like the Tychus pickup.
You don't? Really? Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a Tyrael, yeah. And a bunch of shields to chew through, yeah.
Well, there's two reasons I don't like that. I mean, Tychus, percent damage is percent damage. It's going to be good against everyone. You're still chunking them for a percentage of their health, which means their time to die isn't that drastically different if you're only thinking about the percent damage. But the reason I don't like Tychus is because his only mobility is in run and gun.
Oh, okay.
And he has to turret to get the most out of his trait. You can't stutter step at Tychus without losing damage. It's not possible. The animations aren't fast enough. You literally cannot do it. I made a macro script to try it, and it didn't work. If the computer can't do it, then it's not possible.
Then we can't do it, yeah.
Yeah. What Korean teams like to say is they'll lose one attack per second. So every 1 second, they'll stutter step one attack, and so they'll be attacking 7 times every 2 seconds.
Okay.
In order to, instead of 8 times every 2 seconds, they'll try it. Yeah, they'll try and maximize as best they can, but you're always losing damage.
Right. And against the Tyrael, obviously, there's that extra mobility there. It's going to be hard to pin a hero down and shoot them.
Yeah, so what I like to say is that the delta of your damage has to be higher than the enemy team's, which means if the enemy team is extremely mobile, then your damage has to be very mobile, or you're not going to be getting the damage on them.
Right.
Sometimes that doesn't matter if the fights are over a fixed point. Like if you're on Sky Temple, it doesn't matter how mobile they are. They have to walk onto the temple point at some point if they want to get the objective.
Right.
If they don't, you just stand there, you win the objective. GG.
Yeah.
On Infernal Shrines, if you can sort of control like 3/4 of your shrine instead of half of it, and you can keep the minions on your side. On Battlefield of Eternity, though, mobility allows them to get all sorts of flanks and just get on top of you. And Towers of Doom, you can just delay. Well, the fights happen sort of everywhere. That's another map where mobility is really useful. And if you're immobile, it can be problematic in some ways. Not coincidentally, you'll notice the maps and naming are all really good tracer maps.
Right.
Right. Mobility is king on some maps, and it's useless on others.
Yeah, that's true. And mobility obviously is good here on Cursed Hollow.
Yeah, and I don't like the Tychus pickup because he's an immobile damage dealer against a highly mobile team. Rhaegar has instant mount. Vala has 20% movement speed with Hot Pursuit. Tassadar is relatively immobile. It's true, but post 16 he has his E movement speed and he'll have 2 E's. And Tyrael is just flatly like one of the most mobile heroes in the game, maybe the most mobile hero in the game, depending on talents.
Yeah. Now, basically, the only time Tychus is going to be doing damage is when the target is polymorphed or storm bolted.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not often enough to kill a whole lot of enemy heroes. So yeah,
it's really not. And his mobile damage, his Q, is currently bugged to be missing some of the shots, which teams are aware of.
It does seem weak. Yeah.
It's missing 3 out of the 15 shots. I think it only does 12 when it's supposed to do 15.
Okay.
Ticks.
I didn't know that.
So that's his only mobile damage ability, and it's missing a significant portion of its effectiveness.
Right.
And this is the patch where it was bugged. Teams knew that it was bugged, and they kept drafting Tychus anyway. In some cases, I don't understand why, but I don't like the Dahaka ban because I think that if they took an immobile hero, that would really have helped Fnatic, since it helps to have an immobile hero that you can actually focus and just constantly.
Right. Yeah, Tychus is great against Dahaka.
And I think having Tychus, picking up Tychus as a relatively immobile hero, was just not a good decision.
Right. Now, Medivh, when Dreadnought was on here a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Medivh. To me, on paper, is hands down the best hero in this game. He's just he's got everything. You have to be really high skilled to do it. And we were hoping, and it looks like it's coming true. This is the year that players really start to unlock Medivh and really show off, like, hey, this hero is unbelievable, So I take it you approve of the Medivh pick here?
Yeah. I like Medivh a lot. I like Portals a lot, particularly on Cursed Hollow. There are lots of narrow chokes that are really, really dangerous to walk through and can easily split teams. And portals just give you different avenues of attack that completely bypass all of that terrain that makes this map so difficult to execute correctly. Vision is always critical. I think I even think pro teams don't value vision enough, honestly. And Medivh's vision granting abilities are insane. His damage is on average incredibly high. If you can finish Master's Touch, there's always that caveat.
Right.
Like you have to finish Master's Touch, or Medivh's damage is just not going to be there.
You got to be the master to play Medivh.
Right. And this is, I mean, Shrimpy, I think in this game kept dying, so his damage ended up being really, really low.
Right.
But if you watch, Rich or ADRD consistently play Medivh, some of those heroes, some of those people who are just mechanically very, very good at Medivh, they're sometimes frequently top damage in their game, on the EU ladder, Korean ladder.
Yeah. Rich ADRD really impressed me. The guy on the NA GM ladder, Doma Varian, I've watched him play a few games. He's terrific at the hero, and he does things with Medivh in a very aggressive manner, which is very unique, I think, to him. It's really cool. I just think the hero is amazing. So yeah, Medivh. Hopefully we get now. Medivh's not fun to play against, but man, is he fun to watch. Like he's super fun to watch. So hopefully we get to see more of that out of the pros.
But also I like this comp because there's no displacements except for Holy Ground.
Right.
The biggest punishment for Medivh is displacements, because you see the portal come down,
right?
And normally that's like a poke mechanic almost. That you come in through the portal and you do some damage and you portal right back out. Yep. You get your stacks, you do whatever. But if you can't get back in the portal because you've been displaced away from it, your cooldown's not going to be available. You're going to die.
Yep.
So like on the Korean ladder, where Medivh is a common pick, he's seen in a lot of their games, at least at the GM level. You'll pick Zarya, and then as soon as you see the portal, you just toss Expulsion Zone on it.
Ult it. Yep.
People come out of the portal, they get knocked away, and they're just dead.
Yeah.
Diablo is considered like a reasonable counter to Medivh because he can just sit on top of the portal and overpower, shadow charge you away.
Yeah.
And what do? But Misfits, other than Holy Ground, 0 displacements.
Right.
They cannot stop you from portaling into their team and mucking about. And this does, in some ways, help with the Tychus mobility issue. A little bit.
That's true.
But I think there's a critical difference between movement speed and teleportations.
Because you can do stuff while moving. You can't do stuff while teleporting. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. Well, now one thing I do want to see, hopefully later in this season, is I want to see people start taking the level 1 talent where you place both portals where you want. Because I think that's a spell. I think that's a talent that in the right hands can be really strong. It's just really hard to use.
It is really hard to use, and the primary problem with it, and the reason teams aren't taking it right now, is because the combination of the 1 and 13 talents gives you a 1 second downtime between portals, which means your portal's up basically 100% of the time. And if you place them correctly, having a highway that's available only to your team basically all the time is pretty nuts.
Right. Now, Misfits here do something really interesting. They go into a double auto attacker here with the last pick of Lunara. Now, obviously, it's too late to get blinds, so Vala and Lunara are going to be okay in that department. What do you think of the Lunara pick?
I'm going to say one more thing about Medivh.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Go ahead.
We talked about boss control a little bit earlier on. Leyline Seal actually will allow you to steal bosses.
Oh, yeah.
If there's not multiple heroes on the point, you can Leyline Seal the point and you can steal it. It is always important to have one boss control heroic, and Fnatic is not forgetting that.
Right. They do have that one. You're right. Yeah.
The other one. Lunara is not an auto attack hero. A lot of people think that.
Okay.
Especially a lot of people who play her on the ladder, and I can tell that because of the rate at which certain talents are picked. Lunara stacks her poison via auto attacks, and the vast majority of her damage comes from her trait, which is poisoning people.
Right. Now
it's the damage over time.
But the vast majority of it comes from an auto attack.
Well, no, because she can stack it with her Q.
With the circle. Okay.
She adds a stack. If there's a stack on someone and it's not at full stacks, which is 3, and she uses her W, it adds a stack and slows them. Both of her heroics, in addition to doing direct damage, add poison, so they add the stacks. And she can take talents that will cause her Q in particular to enhance her auto attack to add more stacks in an area.
Okay. You can tell I've never played her. 'Cause I really have never even tried her.
Yeah, her trait. She's a late game. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but her trait scales at 5%, and in the and she has a talent at 13 called Unfair Advantage, which causes her trait to do additional damage to slowed targets.
Okay.
And if you're looking at this comp, you'll notice that there are pretty much a lot of slows. You have Rhaegar's Slow Totem. You have Frost Shot for 16 at Paula, which he does end up taking. Tyrael has Eldruin's Might, and he has Imposing Will later on. So Unfair Advantage doing 50% more damage. And Lennar has her own slow on her W as well.
And
which
means new Tassadar would be great here. Because he has a slow.
Kind of, I guess. But there's a significant amount of slows in this comp. And in the late game, all you're going to see is this poke war that happens where Tyrael keeps Eldruining people with Roderick Reforging. He can keep doing it every like 7 seconds. He can throw that out there.
Yeah.
And Lunara keeps her stacks up on everyone, and she just ends up chunking people. They're sitting, right next to a Brightwing, and they have their own natural regeneration, and their health bars are still going down.
Right. Now, see, these kind of comps here are so foreign to me. Obviously, they're European; they are foreign. But like, these are the kind of drafts that like I don't get. Like, I look at these when I'm watching it, and I'm like, I'm not understanding what they're trying to do here because it's just so far removed from my play experience. And that's why I'd love to get one of the European guys on here to talk about their perspective. But they're asleep and stuff, so it's hard. But yeah, these...
some of them are white. I might be able to help you with that.
Oh, well, I would appreciate it very much, because I'd love to have a European guest on here. I've talked to a few, but they're like, it's pretty late. But anyways, these drafts, like these European comps, I love watching them in action, and I love like kind of theorizing about them, but they are definitely not my comfort zone. Like, I'm like, Tyrael, Lunara, Tassadar. Okay, I guess I kind of get it. So you've illuminated that for me a little bit, and that's...
Yeah, it really is about the mobility.
Yeah.
Unless the team has enough unless the enemy team has enough lockdown to 100-0 a target, you're always going to be able to disengage. And 100-0 a target through Tassadar shields, and through Tyrael shields, and through Sank, and through all the nonsense is basically impossible.
Right.
And these highly mobile comps are something we've seen. In Korea, we've seen them in China. The only reason we actually don't see them is in NA, and I think it's because they're basically higher execution. You have to be really good at positioning. Yeah. You have to be really mobile. Stun comps are like lockdown comps. CC comps are probably the easiest comp to run. Everyone pulled it off in Hero League when Tehran was broken. Just like you draft Tehran, then you draft a stun, and then it's just everyone throws their stun at the same target and they die. It was really easy.
Yeah.
Mobility comps are definitely more difficult, and you need a lot of good mechanical players, a lot of stutter stepping, a lot of practice as a team to I can go exactly this far and then back up. But if I go any further, then they can potentially get to me with these things. I'll die. But these are the teams that can do it.
Right. It's really cool. Thank you for picking this one because it actually helped me understand drafts like this definitely a lot better. So before we move to our next one, which is going to be Noventic and Gale Force, what do you think of Valera?
What do I think of Valera? So we're gonna answer Dr. Nexus 11 questions.
Let's just do it between, yeah.
I think she's a pub stomper, but I don't think she's going to be very good and competitive.
Yeah.
I think her win rates currently reflect that.
Yeah. Now, I just want to point out, when Reddit was talking about how great this hero was on PTR and how it was the most broken thing ever, I was telling people on the stream and like people who would ask me on stream and people I was playing with, I'd be like, no, this hero is not good. Like, this hero has no wave clear. This hero is melee Nova. It's useless. Like, and I'm just happy I'm happy her win rate's low. Okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, her wave is pretty limited. She does have a 1.5 second stun.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. I was running her. I actually found the best success with her when I was running stun comps because I leveled her up in QM with some of my viewers the day she came out, which is something I always do when a new hero comes out. I'll play viewer QMs and level up the hero and experiment with them.
Right.
I have a record. I've played with every single talent on every single hero.
Wow.
So I gotta maintain that every time a new hero comes out.
Gotta keep that up. Yeah.
Yeah. And
hold on real quick. When you do that, do you just go like 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2 2 2, or do you like how do you choose? Just what sounds good, or
if a hero's been out, I'll have a build that I think is going to be really good, and I'll save that one for last. and I'll do every build first that I think is going to be fucking terrible.
Okay, good call.
Because you have the protection of in QM, you have that protection, right? You get the MMR modification to be lower when you're level 1 on a hero.
Right.
So I'll be like, I'm going to try the worst builds first and work up to doing the good ones.
Right, because you're like...
Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong about which build is going to be the best build. But like on Rag, when he first came out, I tried full E-build. That was my first build.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is going to be terrible. It turns out full E-build is probably like his second best build. I think at Masters and Diamond has the second highest win rate.
Nice.
It's actually surprisingly strong. It's just not better than Q.
Right, nothing's better than
because
Q.
Because they're both like anti-melee builds. So there's not like a niche where E is better because they both do the same thing. So why would you go one over the other?
One's just better. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fun. I really do like the full E build.
That's cool. Yeah, I think as far as Valeria goes, I see what they're trying to do with her, and again, it's kind of like the Tassadar thing. I get the point. I think she'll probably be decent with enough time, but right now, not a good hero in my eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Team Noventic versus Gale Force. Oh, let me edit these little names. I should have done that while we were talking about Valeria.
Production value.
Production value. That's my specialty. Noventic. NAV. There we go. And not Misfits, but GFE. Okay. Now, rivals talk trash to each other on Twitter and stuff, and you know, all that. Long history. You know, they're the old names in the NA hero scene, even though it's been like a year and a half or whatever. They're the old vets. These guys. So going into this, obviously a lot of background and stuff. And I am a fan of Noventic. I just like them as a team. But this did not go so well for Noventic, and we're on game 2, Braxis Holdout, which I think is a Gale Force map. They love this map. So what sort of things are you looking at for Braxis Holdout?
With the exception of one Chinese team that has like a really wonky strategy that I won't even go into, the standard way you win Braxis Holdout is you have one strong solo laner and a strong 4-man, and you're looking for as much sustain as possible, and you're just trying to out-sustain the other 4-man. So you poke them down, It doesn't matter if you actually get the kills, you just poke them down and forces them back up. That allows you to push in, you get damage on the towers, you take down the buildings, that gives you a bonus experience, you get a little tiny bit ahead, and then you just leverage that lead. So it's a very, very early game map. Early game heroes are a huge priority. Having the strong solo laner is a huge priority. So winning the solo lane is critical, and there's kind of a dynamic in a lot of cases right now where the solo lane's kind of a rock paper scissors dynamic. There's certain heroes that will always win against certain other heroes. So you kind of don't want to pick your solo laner early, because then it gives the enemy team the opportunity to be like, oh, we'll just do, pick XYZ,
counter,
and we're guaranteed to win that lane. And if you're winning 50% of the lanes automatically, you're in rough shape.
Right.
This is Gul'dan's best map. It is a really good map for, we'll talk a little bit more in the draft, but this is a really good map for a pretty big variety of heroes.
Sure. It's actually one of my favorite maps. I think it's fun.
But the most important aspect is controlling that point. Right. So your 4-man has to have some way of beating the other 4-man to control the point. In the end, if you can't control the points, you're not going to win the objective, and the objective on Braxis is insanely strong.
Yeah.
And the amount of push it gives you just puts the game in your favor. All you have to do after you've won one objective on Braxis is not make a mistake, and you're going to win the game.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It definitely puts the burden of execution on the team that lost the beacons, because they have to force you to screw up at that point. Yeah. Or you just screw up naturally. So first ban is on the side of Team Noventic, and they first banned the Tassadar.
And I mean, we talked about it already, but the 4-man's all about sustain. You really, really, really want to have the ability to constantly sustain. Tassadar is also kind of a weird position as a solo laner. He can tie almost anyone because his escape is really good with his E.
Right.
Again, this is pre-patch Tassadar, and his wave clear is good enough that it's really hard for anyone to push into him. Even old Zag, who was nuts, right, who's just like a pushing monster and would destroy buildings. Tassadar could basically tie her in lane for the first 3.5 minutes of the game, and then the bailing damage got to be too much, and he would start to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But it was doable. So either you put Tassadar in the 4-man and you have something like a Tassadar Vala, or you put Tassadar in the solo lane. Like
And hold his
and
own. Yeah.
and banning Tassadar also just cuts off an entire like fork of the draft. So if you think of this as if the draft is this giant flow chart, well, they went that, so we can't go this,
The
and
whole tree
the
branch.
heroes counters and all of this knowledge that people have about what is good against what. Tassadar just cuts off an entire fork. It's like gone.
Right.
You don't have to think about it anymore.
Right. That's always nice.
Like unless you're going to be black, you ban Tracer, you ban Tassadar, you know you're not going to see Tracer.
Right. I mean, he is the ultimate enabler. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. First ban. Let me make sure I'm not looking at this wrong. They do first ban Morales, Gale Force.
They do first ban Morales. There's two reasons for that. This is Morales' best map.
Okay.
Because again, it's all about sustain, and it's all about that 4-man. You're not going to be able to actually get someone low or even kill someone against a Morales unless your entire team is focusing them, and by that I mean literally all 5 of them.
Right.
But one of them's a solo laner. How do you focus all 5 of them when one of them's not there?
Right. Not there. Yeah.
We've seen situations where someone like literally walked into a team, like a 3-man with a safeguard and a beam on them, and their health basically didn't move.
Right.
So the first 4 levels, having that level of healing is nuts. And again, it's all about controlling that point. You can usually win the first point just based off standing there with Morales healing you.
Yeah. Okay. So
if you're the right tank.
So this is Morales' best map, you'd say?
This is Morales' best map, and Morales is Kenma's best support.
Right. Okay.
So not only is this a map specific ban, it's a targeted ban at Naventics support player.
Got it. So double win there. Okay. So first pick coming out of Naventic is going to be the Malf. Malf, obviously, since his big buffs a few months ago, has always been very highly prioritized. Didn't see him quite as much this draft, this tournament, but we still saw a lot of interaction with Malf. So what do you think of the first pick Malf here from Naventic?
I think it's really good. There's 3 really sustainy supports that can just constantly keep a team up in the 4-man when you're constantly doing this poke war. It's Morales, we already talked about. Malfurion, just because he's very, very efficient with his healing over time.
Yes.
And Brightwing. Those are the top 3. But Malf has something else that no other support in the game manages, is just mana sustain.
Right.
If you're going to draft a hero who's dependent on mana to be effective, which is, let's be honest, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And most heroes have mana problems. A globe every so often and a tap is not necessarily enough to keep them at full enough mana to be able to do everything they need to do.
Right.
If you draft Malf, you're suddenly in a situation where only Malf ever has to back.
Right.
Everyone else should be able to get by with globes, tap, innervates, and Malf Qs.
Plus, there are times when that excuse me, I've been sick. There are times when that innervate cooldown reduction is a big factor, like on a Li Ming or Kael'thas.
It can be.
Yeah.
You get that 2.5 seconds off every 30 baseline, and if you can do it mid-fight, which I mean, if it's going to give you an advantage, pros are going to practice it, right? So this is a situation where it's reasonable to think that it's actually going to matter. And he did in fact take the level 1 talent reduction, Shendo's Clarity.
Shendo, yeah.
So.
Okay, so yeah, obviously trying to maximize that innervate. So what obviously this is a great Gul'dan map, but do you think he's the best? Well, he doesn't really count as a mana dependent. I mean, he is mana dependent, but it's a weird thing. What do you think of the best mage to pair with Malf on this map would be?
The best mage?
Yeah, since we're talking about, or not mage necessarily, the best mana user that you would, what would you pair with Malfurion on Brax's Holdout?
I mean, it depends on what your comp is, but the thing is, one of the things that Malf gives you is also the root. So it gives you lockdown, and if you pair him with like a Murder or EDC, that's 2.5 seconds of lockdown.
Right, that's true.
And so my answer would be the EU answer. It would be Jaina.
Jaina, okay, nice, yeah. Jaina is very EU. I like that hero too. So first 2 picks that come out from Gale Force are a couple power picks on this map. We got Gul'dan and Zarya.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
The Gul'dan is just nuts. Gul'dan's wave clear is some of the most insane wave clear in the entire game, especially when Echo Corruption gets picked up and it gets finished, rather, I should say. And it's just like, you go back and forth across a wave or a wave of Zerg, it just chunks them. His range on his Q is really high.
Yeah.
And that gives you a lot of poke potential.
And that Oh, sorry. I was going to say a lot of the pros, I don't know if they're doing it in competitive yet, but I've seen them on streams. They're actually doing the Q build on this map.
That's a Korean thing,
Is it?
and it's specifically a Korean thing with Ariel.
Oh, okay.
They'll go Q talents, and what they'll do is they'll poke. And the reason for that, and people are going to be like, NA sucks here, but the reason for that is if you watch Korean streams and you watch Gul'dan's Go corruption build, they actually don't get it stacked up because Koreans dodge.
They can dodge everything.
They're constantly dodging the E of corruption. It actually just doesn't do as much damage. So the reason Koreans switched over to the Q build was because it was more reliable.
Because they could hit it.
Because you're going to hit these people who are constantly stutter stepping. Yeah, it's a far more popular build, and since the damage is more reliable, Ariel's Hope Generation is more reliable, right? So it's really important to have that interplay. It's also just a little bit more survivable against certain comps with the other Q talents like the Fell Armor at 13, and the extra damage from your Q stacks at 16. If you're consistently hitting your Q, it's just constantly stacking up. Get a nice little bonus there.
So when you're playing Gul'dan in NA Hero League, in your Plat League or whatever like me, just stick with Echoed Corruption. They're not going to dodge it. Okay, got it. Good tip. Thank you.
I had a game today where I was done. I was on Infernal Shrines and I was done with the Echoed Corruption quest after the first shrine because they had 3 melee and they literally just stood in it. Oh man. I was like, okay.
Well, mission accomplished, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. It was...
Oh, NA.
I do have a Korean account and I play on it. When I play on my Korean account for certain heroes, I have to play different builds.
Really?
Because people dodge. Also, and especially in my case, because the ping is a little bit.
So there really is, like, just the average player, there's a significant difference. I haven't tried it.
The mechanics are different. The emphasis is different. Koreans, because they want to play very aggressively, don't want to take damage because they want to be active on the map and they want to stay on top of you. So they practice dodging a lot more.
Right.
Whereas NA is like... NA players, I think, get tunnel vision. They're like, I want to kill this guy, and I don't care how much damage I take to do it. But sometimes you don't win that trade.
It's me versus you, mano and mano. Yeah, I get it. That's definitely what I've seen. So the next 2 picks from Noventic here are going to be ETC and Tychus.
Yeah, I like the ETC pickup. Power slide into roots is just one of the strongest things in the game right now. I'd actually go so far as to say, unless you have a very specific plan, you should not let a team have ETC mouth together.
Right.
GV had a plan. We'll get to that, but it's really difficult to deal with. But the thing is, you need significant follow up, which is why I like Jaina, because Blizzard, Cone of Cold, Frostbolt
that's the burst right there.
It's so much burst. Tychus doesn't really give you that.
No.
Right. Maybe they could have held off on picking the Jaina to the last round. Maybe that would have been okay. They could have replaced Li Ming, but especially because Tychus went. In the rhythm over Bigger They Are. Bigger They Are can kind of be bursty, right? Kind of makes sense. Also, if you go Commandeer Odin, I kind of like Bigger They Are a little bit better because you can Bigger They Are someone and then Commandeer Odin, back off, and you can get this timing where you can use both of your 2 cool tools in the same way. Whereas in a lot of cases, if you go in the rhythm, you're like, okay, well, I did a little bit of damage and I'm backing up and I'm gonna Odin and come back in. It's just it feels awkward every time I play it, and every time I see pros do it, even though they're professional players, I look at the replays. And it's just
someone decided in the rhythm was the better choice against multiple warriors, which I think mathematically it is, but I still favor Bigger They Are because it's like, well, how about we just kill 1 tank? Then that's pretty good, right? Like, yeah.
I mean, most things have escapes. Is the problem.
That's
so
true.
Just chunking 1 tank. That's kind of a win though, because they're forced to back out of the fight. But I think both talents are really good. They just are situational, and I think one of the reasons that Tychus had like a 6% win rate in NA over HGC this weekend is because people in NA don't pick the right talents for the right builds at the right times. I think it's actually a huge problem.
Now, I actually feel that way about the way they're building Zul'jin too, but I'm going to write an article about it, so we can't talk about it now. But I think people are building Zul'jin wrong. Yeah, all right. So, and the ETC, obviously, we talked about ETC already. Malf roots with this power slide. Yeah, okay. So, second ban phase coming in here. GFE does ban out the Artanis. So, ban from Artanis. What do you think of that?
I mean, ban Artanis, you're banning 2 things. You're banning the blind and you're banning the swap. Currently, all they've revealed is a Zarya. Zarya is an immobile frontline hero, basically, right? She kind of has to stand in the front because she turrets. She can't stutter step, really, without losing damage. She has the same issue Tychus does. And you have a mobile frontline hero without an escape, and you get swapped in the enemy team, you just die.
Swap, man. The thing is so powerful. Like, swaps that, and they emphasize this a lot, the commentators over the weekend. It's one of those spells where you only need to hit it once at the right time, and you win the game. Like, and it's his E. It's not his ult. It's his E, you know. So
it's on a 16-second cooldown base. You can talent it to 10. It adds a slow. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Overall, and Artanis' survivability is ridiculous. The blind, it can negate a significant amount of damage.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things where you're like, we already have a primarily auto attack hero. We have our mage. We're not going to draft another mage, which means we're drafting 1 to 2 more auto attack heroes.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, when they added the swap to the Blade Dash, I was all for it. I've always been all for that idea. But I thought they were going to do it so where when he casts it in his Blade Dash, he stops while it's swapping, and then those 2 spots are swapped. Not he keeps going.
So it's just a gap closer?
Yeah, like I thought.
That's not nearly as cool.
No, it's not as cool. It's also not as like, oh my god, this is crazy broken. But yeah. I thought they were going to do it like good old Blizzard. They go all the way to the hilt, man. They're like, nah, just swap 2/5 of their team for like 4 screen lengths. That's fine.
I like it. It has a tempo. That's like a cool playmaking advantage. It has a certain tempo thing because you have to like release your E at the right time, not only to hit the target, but like to end up in the right place.
I will never disagree that it's not cool. It's very cool. I play Artanis like crazy, but that's a bit much, I think. I don't know. That's just me. So they ban Artanis here. And the ban that comes out, Naventic really emphasizing the supports here. They do ban the Brightwing, yes.
And, you know, listed 3 heroes that are amazing in sustain. Mm-hmm. Morales, Brightwing, Mouth. They're all either taken or banned.
They're all prioritized here, yeah.
I will say that if you have a Hope Battery, Ariel trumps all 3 of them in terms of sheer throughput.
Yeah, because the Hope Battery's sitting right there. Like
yeah, but you need to have... There's like a short list of heroes that are good Hope Batteries. Mm-hmm. And... It's like 5 heroes, maybe even just 4 if you don't want to count like Cho'Gall.
What are those heroes? So people.
It's Gul'dan, Vala, Lunara can do it, but only in the late game. Particularly, she needs the scaling advantage, and she needs Splintered Spear, which is a level 7 talent. Mm-hmm. And she gets better and better and better as the game goes on. But the early game is really rough. This is a 2-lane map, so Lunara's out. Lunara doesn't count she counts overall, but not for this for this list particularly. And Cho'Gall. Because you get energy from both Cho and Gall, and Gall's it's what I like to call bullshit damage. You just want a hero who does bullshit damage.
Yeah.
The higher the raw number is, the happier you are. It doesn't matter if it's effective damage at all. It just matters that you can do the raw numbers.
Right. Now do you think Kael'thas can kind of fit in there?
He cannot. Because this is the second consideration. You need high numbers. They need to be bullshit high. Mm-hmm. But like if you go look at the average damage done by a hero on like HOTS logs, like there's actually an option for this. You can see the average statistics for every single hero. Mm-hmm. You can sort by like leagues, and you can see like what's the average damage and Li Ming does or something. Mm-hmm. Li Ming does all of her damage on the back end of a fight though because of resets. Right, so she's poking and she's poking, she gets a reset, and then boom, she gets another reset, boom, she gets another reset. Mm-hmm. So her damage curve is like pretty steady and then spiky, right? Kael'thas' damage curve is like a sine wave because it's based on those 8-second. It's basically based on Flame Strike, right? Unless people are just constantly spreading Chain Bomb, in which case you don't need a support because the enemy team's dead. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. So you need steady, high damage.
Steady, high damage.
So, Gul'dan's cooldowns are 3 seconds, right? His Q. Vala's auto attack, it doesn't have a cooldown. You're just standing there, and she gets burst damage with her W, which gives you a little bit of an extra edge. Zarya's damage, very, very consistent. Mm-hmm. Cho'Gall's damage, very, very consistent because it's coming from 2 different heroes, one of whom is kind of an auto attack hero, one of whom is kind of a mage.
Right.
But like, unless you're hitting every single, so even though Chromie and Li Ming, I think, have the highest average damage of any hero, if you check HOTS logs, they're terrible hope targets because they would need to be hitting every single shot on every single cooldown to have that steady generation that you need.
Right. Gul'dan's spells aren't hard, well, especially his Q, aren't hard to hit, so you can count on it. Yeah. Okay.
Not hard to hit, not on a long cooldown.
Yeah. So I get it. Okay. So those are your Ariel buddies there.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at the Gul'dan and I'm looking at the Brightwing ban, and I'm like, yeah, I know Akaface likes playing Brightwing, and yeah, it's a global, so if you're losing the 4-man, he can go help with a soul lane instantaneously, and suddenly you're losing 2 lanes.
Right.
But, like, do you really want to risk Ariel when Zarya is there because Zarya gives you the shields, which gives Ariel time to build up hope and have the shields kind of are anti-poke, and then Ariel's heal when everyone actually gets low. So then there's a big burst heal area heal for everyone
Right.
to sustain.
Mhm.
So that's the second mistake I think Niantic made during this draft was not banning Ariel right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's who I'd be looking at if I saw Gul'dan first pick for sure. But I guess they thought the Brightwing was a bigger threat. So GFE goes ahead and picks up two heroes here. Another Hope Engine that you just mentioned, and the Hope Giver, Vala and Ariel.
Yeah, and this once the draft is completely finished and we see like where everything ended up, I'm gonna talk pretty in depth about what tanks are and
Okay.
what they do
Okay.
because it's pretty interesting. But for now, it's just like that. Avala adds sustained damage, adds wave clear, is another hope generator, and Ariel is just nuts when
Yeah.
you can feed her hope because she gives you basically infinite sustain. It's monoliths, and infinite sustain on Brax's holdout is everything you could ever want in a
Right.
support.
And
Because you just want to win the 4-man, which means you never want to back.
right, and the nice thing now she gets to pick and choose, right? Like obviously Akaface is skilled enough to flip that crown where it's needed between cooldowns and stuff. So gonna get a lot of
Yeah.
hope. Yeah, so that's cool. Finishing up Naventic's team, they do end up with a very late game Ragnaros, a Li Ming and a Ragnaros.
Li Ming gives them poke potential, but it actually is a mistake.
Okay, let's hear about that.
Zarya at full energy
Right.
is easily one of the most terrifying heroes in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to get Zarya to full energy is large, predictable damage.
Throw a giant thing on her like a carrier pigeon saying, "Hello,
Yeah.
press shield."
It's
Yeah.
large, predictable damage. And you're not going to have a hero. Fan ended up playing her. You're not going to have a player like Fan who like misses the shield or mistimes it.
Right.
It's not going to happen. So like either you're stunning Zarya, in which case she can't shield herself, but she has a ton of HP.
Yeah.
Or you're stunning someone else and she's going to get shield allied, and
Right.
most of the Gleaming's burst for the pick is going to be absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
So predictable damage is Zarya's bread and butter when it comes to negating
Right.
it, and Li Ming's is just like some of the most predictable damage in the game.
Her and Chromie, yeah.
So like if you're up against good Zarya, you never want to pick Li Ming.
That's good advice, I would say. Yeah, yeah. I've run into that on because that's the beauty of drafting, right? The beauty and the nightmare of drafting is there's so many things you have to remember. If you forget one little thing, like Li Ming, you can see her damage coming, then you just ruined the game essentially. It's tough, man. Yeah,
It's a really rough dynamic.
yeah. It's intense. That's why we have this show.
And I mean that was Splendor's rant, right? A couple of weeks ago. Splendor's a professional.
Mm-hmm.
A support player in EU. He's like, HOTS feels like chess boxing because it feels like every draft you're playing this intense game of chess, and then you gotta go box, then you come back and you play some more chess.
Yeah.
And drafting is difficult. Arguably, the hardest part of playing competitive HOTS is learning to draft well.
Yeah.
And teams that can draft well, oftentimes, even if they're like a worse team mechanically, will just win games because
Right.
you can win in the draft, especially on certain maps, especially on 2-lane maps, I would say. You can just literally win the game in the draft, and all that's left is average execution, and you're going to take the game home.
Right. If MOBAs still fall under the strategy game category, this is the strategic part. Like you have to have it's a turn-based strategy game. Really, that's why I love drafting because to me it's a really interesting turn-based strategy game that also has like mind games and mentality and specific opponents in it. It's really something worth exploring more and more, and I think it helps your game overall the better you get at it. I'm still not good at it, but my God, 23 episodes later, I am such a better drafter because of this show. So much better. Thanks, guys. Thanks to
Has it only been 23 episodes? I feel like Drafthouse has been on for so much longer than that.
I think this is the 23rd one. Now, we've had some weeks off and stuff, but not many. I mean, it's been, 4 or 5 months, something like that. 6 months, maybe.
I thought it had been on for longer.
No, not that
It feels
long.
like such a fixture of the community. Okay, I'm just crazy.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm glad you feel that way. So, last pick for Gale Force Esports. We've talked about the 2-lane map here.
Well, they picked up, NBT picked up Rag too.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot Rag. Yeah, let's talk about Rag.
So, I mean, we talked about Rag earlier, but he's nuts right now. He has soloing potential. He has defensive potential. We talked about Brax's Hold in particular was a map where if you lose the first objective, generally the enemy team just has to lean on you and not make a mistake, and you'll fall over. It's actually not the case with Rag.
Right. Yeah.
Rag's defensive potential is so high
Makes
with
up for it.
Molting 4 that you can actually kind of lose a couple objectives and still be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like he slows the game down so much, which also makes him a really good accessory for late game heroes in general.
Right.
There's none in this draft, but like some of the drafts we've seen from EU in particular, they really like their late game heroes, and they pick up their Rag. They're like, yeah, we're going late game heroes for the rest of the draft, and we'll just be defensive. It's fine.
Yeah, just turtle up.
They win. They win with those comps. It's so nuts.
What do you think the best late game heroes are?
Well, the best late game hero is Cho'Gall.
Well,
like,
okay, sure.
Far away.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty good. As
and
far
then
as
Zebo
heroes,
Lunara
Zebo, because the vial infection.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, that talent is insane. Okay, so there's the Ragnaros. Obviously, he has a lot of utility on this map and is a really strong hero on all maps. So, yeah.
And it gives him the soul laner. It's because he has wave clear, he can't really lose the soul lane.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you have enough wave clear, you can never lose the same lane. You can at worst tie it, because you can get in a situation where you clear the wave, you hearth back, you get back in time to clear the next wave. Like, that's the worst case scenario.
Right.
And realistically, that's not going to happen very often. There's not that many heroes where that is even an issue.
And if it does, it's not the end of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a defensive advantage. He's a really good solo laner. He has a lot of 1v1 potential, and he has sustained in his Q, so he's relatively survivable. He has kind of a weird escape with his E. With the movement speed, it's decent. It's not like fantastic as an escape,
it's not a dash, but
he's tanky enough that it's not that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably the best hero left. And looking at this draft, Niantic is probably aware that GFE is going to be going solo Warrior Zarya.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't, then Gul'dan's the solo laner, which technically he can do. But you don't want to do that.
It's not his best. Not really exploiting his power. Yeah.
No, I think actually Alarak has the same problem, because they can solo lane. A lot of people are like, well, you should draft him as a solo laner. I think Alarak's actually better with the team securing picks with his combo.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons that we don't see him have a very good win rate, a very high performance right now, because people are solo laning with him.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on a 2-lane map and you're up against like a Rexar and you're going to absolutely beat them in lane, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then unless you're in a matchup where you're going to take a big part of the objective away and dominate the lane, I don't think it's worth it.
Right.
So they're probably not going to Gul'dan solo lane, but maybe they do. Maybe they forget, because people do forget, and they're like, okay, well, Ragnaros beats Gul'dan in lane. We can. They're going to draft a warrior, and then we'll have a 4-man of whatever warrior plus Arya Val Zarya. We can do decently against that.
I wonder if Niantic thought they were going to draft another warrior here, or if they.
I want to, I want to know the answer. I really do. I want to know if they thought about it or not, because to me it's obvious that they're going to go solo warrior Zarya.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's not obvious to me. I would have been like, oh yeah, you can't solo Zarya, but turns out you can, because they do actually end up rounding out their draft with. What happened?
Yeah.
No, my webpage froze. Oh no.
Oh, that sucks.
Well, it's Thrall. I can't type it in right now, but
they round out the draft with Thrall.
Yeah. Oh, there he goes. Thrall. It's, I don't know. It's being all weird. So yeah, Thrall. So they do solo tank Zarya now.
And solo warrior.
I'm sorry, solo warrior. You're right. I keep using the word tank, but why don't you tell us about what the difference is?
So I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know, but I wrote a guide a long time ago at this point. It feels like it's been years, but it's actually just a few months, called The Art of the Tank. And I sort of broke down the 4 critical things that tanks do at the competitive level in Heroes of the Storm. Mm-hmm. And my hope was that people would take that information and sort of apply what they could to their Hero League games. I made a video about it where I followed around to professional Korean players during a replay, mm-hmm. and sort of showed how they were executing these 4 simple points. And it's really 4 simple things. They were just doing the same thing over and over and over again to take care of it. The first one is mobile ward. So most tanks, Murden, ETC, Tyrael, have some kind of escape. They have some kind of mobility tool, mm-hmm. that allows them to get away, and they have relatively high health pools. So if they get focused, they can, they don't get bursted out right away. They're sitting in a bush. They're breaking rotations. They'll, if on Dragonshire, they'll sit in the triangle of death, and when they see someone rotating through it, they'll dismount them, and it makes them a little bit slower on their rotations, which makes your team has more time to rotate and wave clear safely. and it's warding. It's mobile ward. You can also use it aggressively for picks. Diablo kind of does that
Yeah.
more so than mobile warding, but it's the one of the important things. They have an escape which allows them to do this thing. If you gave a tank like a vision mechanic like Tassadar and no escape, I think they would actually be in a pretty similar place. They'd still be able to do it. I think that would actually something Blizzard should probably explore at some point.
That'd be cool.
The second one is the ability to peel for their team. So what I mean by that is if you have a dive hero, you have a lot of damage, and that damage tries to get onto a specific hero in your backline who's relatively fragile, you can be like, no, you can face melt them away. You can stun them. You can slow them with Murden's Thunderclap, which also does attack speed, which is going to reduce the amount of damage coming in against the heroes where auto attack is the relative factor. You can sank them. You can righteousness them. You can imposing will. You'll notice the tanks all have these tools that allow them to be like, no, you're not going to hurt my ally.
Right. Protection skills, yeah.
Now, Zarya doesn't have the first one, but she kind of has the second one in Shield Ally, right? The third one is initiating fights, and usually this is tied to their escape in some way, but it basically gives them a mobility mechanic that allows them to pick a target and be like, we're going to go on this target now. Murden's jump into Stormbolt, classic Gate Initiation, not Underking, but Burrow Charge from Anubarak, plus Impale, gives you 1.5 seconds of CC, Power Slide from ETC. Zarya does not have that.
Nope. None of that.
And the fourth one is Damage Sponge, the ability to literally tank damage for your team, because you have to be in the front. The enemy team always has poke. You should always attack whoever you can attack safely, which means if you're going to give your team vision of the enemy team, you need to be far enough up that they can attack you. You're going to absorb some damage. You need to be able to live through that. So Zarya can kind of do some of those things, and she absolutely can't do the rest, but Brax's holdout doesn't have rotations.
Right.
You have a solo lane and a 4-man. If you rotate to the other lane and it's not a global rotation, like you don't have a hero that has a global to do the rotation,
forever. Yeah.
You're suddenly in a 4v3 for like 15 seconds. You lose that 4v3. Yeah. They're just going to push in and get a tower. Your one guy is going to back up because they should be playing safely. Rotations don't matter, so warding and breaking rotations don't matter.
Right.
So that's out the window, just off the table completely. Initiation. You don't need to initiate if you're just pushing in because there's not that much room to back up. Right. If you just on
the beacon or not,
Yeah, you just literally walk up to them. Either they back up or they're taking damage. You don't need to initiate fights. Now, is there a better tank? Is there a better warrior than Zarya at damage sponging and peeling, essentially?
Yes.
Who?
Oh, a warrior that's better at those two things?
Yeah, just those two things specifically.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think straight up soaking damage, Muradin's probably better. Don't you? I mean, he has...
It's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, he has...
I've done the math. It's pretty close.
Is it? Okay.
Muradin is technically better. Okay. But...
As far as the other thing, no. I would say there isn't. Yeah.
And then on a map like this where you're constantly skirmishing, Zarya can always maintain full energy. Is there a warrior that does more damage than Zarya when she's at full energy?
Absolutely not. No.
No, there's not.
Not even
so
close.
she's second or third for the only two categories that matter for tanking on this map, and she's top for damage.
Right. Huh, that's very interesting. So I wonder, gosh, so would you say this is the only map that these things apply to Zarya for?
It's not the only map that it applies. I would say on other maps it's a little bit cheesier.
Right.
Like there are a split push comps on Cursed Hollow that are very effective, and Zarya ends up being a really good hero at delaying because of the sheer range of her grenades. And the same thing, you kind of know where the enemy team is, and you're just trying to delay and soak damage for your team and make sure you don't get too overextended, which is something she excels at.
Right.
And she doesn't really have to mobile ward because the enemy team's there trying to contest the tribute. You have whoever split pushing Abathur. You can have like an Asmodean General of Hell thing going on with Hellish Hirelings. The 4 talent, you can do stuff like that. But 2-lane maps are the best maps for this dynamic, and of the 2-lane maps, Braxis is the best one because there's a fixed point that you're trying to control.
Now, do you think you could pull this off without Ariel on this map?
You could. Malfurion and Morales would both be reasonable substitutes, but getting Zarya and Malfurion shouldn't happen
Right.
given the way Malfurion's prioritized in the draft right now. And hopefully after this week, teams understand exactly how good Zarya is on it. 'Cause I know some of them didn't, some of them underestimated it.
Right.
And after they saw this game, they're like, okay, yeah, okay, we get it. We'll start drafting Zarya.
Yeah.
And I think Medic.
Yeah, Medic
kind of does require peel. So you're suddenly very dependent on Medic's positioning being perfect all the time, which is, I mean, I know these are professional players, but that's a tough bar to set.
Right.
So I do think that Ariel is the best support for this, and the primary reason is Detainment Streak.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because if you do happen to need peel, if you do happen to be like, no, I can't have you on my ally right now, Ariel's pretty much the only support with a displacement that acts as peel.
Right.
Which is Zarya, the one thing Zarya outside of Shield Ally just can't do.
Right. That's actually a very good point. Like, especially on a map like this, Detainment Strike can be such a big factor on those beacons with those walls everywhere. So yeah, that's a factor I hadn't considered. But the other thing is Ariel here with the two engines, right? The dually. Oh, that's tires. The V2 Ariel. With two Hope engines here, can keep. I would still be worried about Zarya's ability to stay alive. I don't know if I would against this team, because if she gets Power Slide and Roots on her, yeah, then it's time to worry. But other than that, they don't have a lot of blow up for her. So Ariel, I think, Ariel definitely makes it okay to have Zarya here with Gul'dan and Vala on her side. So, and then you have a nice cozy solo laner with Thrall, so that's a nice draft for sure.
Yeah.
That 4-person team right there at the bot lane that's a lot to deal with. Absolutely.
It's nuts. Also, ever since ETC's rework, he lost the they made the range on slide baseline, and they removed the increased speed.
Right.
Which means that if he's sliding from max range, you can he's not unstoppable during slide.
No. Yeah.
So if he's sliding from max range, it's actually within the realm of human reaction times to cancel the slide if you have a stun or displacement.
Right.
And we actually saw it multiple games or multiple times during the set where Detainment Strike would literally cancel Power Slide.
And that's Akaface, right?
So yeah. So if Zarya maintains her range from ETC in such a way that Ariel's like behind her, and only a max range Power Slide can hit the Zarya, Ariel can always cancel it with Detainment Strike.
Right. If the execution's on point, then it's never going to happen. Okay.
Right. And Fan was really good about maintaining that perfect distance. Sometimes you would even see him, and I know people who were watching, because I was watching Twitch chat, were confused about why they were not playing aggressively and why he was backing up. It's because they were maintaining that range. They were always just maintaining just at the edge of what Power Slide can do, because that way you can interrupt Power Slide.
Right. Keeping ETC at arm's length. Interesting. Huh.
And when Power Slide was on cooldown, they had a 12-second window where they would play very aggressively, and then as that cooldown ended, they would back up.
Now, if Power Slide's canceled, it's not like an ult, right? It uses the whole cooldown?
It uses the whole cooldown.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's cool. I did not even realize that. I mean, I remember watching the game. I don't look at Twitch chat because I watch in full screen in my comfy bed, and I don't care about what they say, but I do remember thinking, like, I didn't think it was a bad thing. I was just kind of like, I wonder why they're, like, kind of leading this ETC on this merry chase, rather than fighting. And now I know why, so that's good. Okay. Well, those were a couple very good drafts. Obviously, Gale Force Esports 3-0'd Naventic here. Like I said, I'm a Naventic fan, so it was kind of, I mean, obviously it's early days, it's first week. I'm sure they can pick it back up, but I was a little disappointed. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that Naventic got outdrafted in every single game they lost.
Yeah, this is obviously a draft win for GFE when you look at it and you.
When you break it down for an hour, you can.
When you talk about it for an hour and figure out what's going on, definitely a draft for GFE. Yeah, so that's cool. Don't let anybody tell you that NA HOTS players don't know what they're doing. They just don't have quite the same mechanics. They're very good drafters. So
I mean, some of them are.
Some of them are. Well, this is an example of
some of the teams you look at and you're like, that draft. Like every single B-step draft for literally the entire week.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they're. Sometimes I look at American HOTS teams and I say, "Did you actually practice? Like, are you taking this seriously, young man?" Because like sometimes it looks like they're not to me. But
I know. I get that same feeling.
Yeah. Like, come on, man. They're even paying you now. Please. Like, anyways. So, yeah. Those were 2 very good drafts. The VOD for this will be up tomorrow. What do you have coming up in the near future, Cavalier?
I can't talk about it.
Oh, a big secret project.
It's not a big secret project. I am working on. I'm still making my hero guides. I'm actually working on the updates right now for the heroes that have been changed. Those will be out soon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to establish like a pipeline of guides because week to week I've been having some problems keeping up on it. So I want to get like a backlog, which is why they haven't been coming out for a while. In addition to some other real life things that have been going on, but I'm also currently in talks with an org to become their one of their primary content creators for Heroes of the Storm. I just can't talk about which org or when or what's going to be going on.
I'm calling Team Liquid. That's my guess.
We'll find out. I have some cool stuff coming up, but I just can't talk about it yet. Also, because of HGC, educational scrims had to be moved off of Saturdays, and I'm trying to find a way to reschedule it. But the problem is that the time that are convenient for normal people who have jobs is not convenient for all the pro players who want to help out and be guest captains.
Hey, you've noticed I run into that problem too. Yeah, for sure.
Because like right now, not right now, but starting at like 4 p.m. PST, which I thought would be a good time because it's 7 East, so then you can like go on, and then East people will play first, and then the PST people will come back from work and be able to play. It was like right when all the teams start scrims.
Yep. I found that out too when I scheduled Drafthouse on the official Blizzard schedule Thursdays at 7 Pacific. I was like, this will be a good time, Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. So it's always a struggle, but yeah. So you have some content coming out. You have your guides coming out. You have some secret content source coming, so that's good. You doing any casting in the near future?
Just the HUC Open for NA, for NA at least, which is going to happen every other week. And I think I'll also be casting HUC EU Open as well. I have permission to. I just have to wake up because it's at a different hour.
Oh, okay.
Hours, I should say. Chair League is starting up again soon, I believe on the 30th. For those of you who don't know, Chair League is sort of a recreational HOTS league. It has 4 divisions. The Pro Division is invite only, and then has Division 1, 2, and 3. So you guys can just... There's a whole thing for finding teams. There, you can sign up as a free agent and look for a team on your own.
Chair League is like kind of like your local softball league or whatever, where you and some dudes could just get together and schedule some games and play. So it's really good way to improve. Check it out for sure. Dr. Nice did ask if you have a tier list.
I don't like tier lists. And the primary reason I don't like tier lists is because in order for them to be meaningful, they would have to be map specific.
That's very true.
Just because there's so many drafting considerations that go into different maps. Like, Vikings are just not good on Tomb. No. They're just never going to be good on Tomb. No. Abathur's not good on Tomb, except for this one weird cheese thing that Stray likes to do sometimes in some metas. Yeah. So, I honestly, the best advice I can give anyone is go to HOTS logs, sort by your league specifically, and then go to the map that you're actually on. The top heroes for the win rate in your league on that map, those are the heroes that you should be most afraid of.
There's your tier list, yeah. Okay.
It's more data driven. It's less opinion based. The tier list, like Stray's tier list, is really good for GM solo queue hero league.
Right. Which is what he does, so it makes sense.
Which is what he does. It's really good for that. It's not so good for like bronze solo queue hero league. It's not so good for like bronze unranked. It's not even really good for silver unranked.
Yeah.
Or silver hero league, unfortunately.
Right.
Okay. And comfort picks matter. And this is the best example of this. Lockdown, who is one of the best ranged assassins in the world, in spring qualifiers for Worlds, he was Korean Super League, played against MVP Black on Infernal Shrines when Falstad was the dream. Falstad was the meta. Everyone wanted to play Falstad.
Right.
He had insane damage. He had global. And he had Gust, which was just a huge playmaking heroic for either engaging or disengaging or all sorts of shenanigans.
Yep.
He didn't know how to play Falstad.
Right.
He had literally never played Falstad before, and he started practicing like the week before. But they got to the draft, and he was like, "Guys, I don't want to play Falstad. I don't think we can win if I play Falstad." He's now currently considered one of the best Falstads in the world, so he did eventually get there. Yeah. But they drafted Vala, who was not in the meta. Vala had not seen a pro game in literally like months. In Korea, at least.
Right.
And they drafted Vala, and they dominated. If a professional player, one of the best players in the world at his particular role, and his role as ranged assassin, is like, I need to play a hero I'm actually good at, or
Right.
this is not going to work.
That always trumps it. Yeah.
People might want to back up and be like, okay, I'm going to play a hero I'm actually good at. Now, drafting matters,
Yeah.
but if you draft a hero that you're fundamentally not able to play because you've never practiced it,
Yeah.
you're not going to win games. It's a little bit better to play heroes that you're good at than it is to play a hero that's perfectly meta.
And that's what I do in Team League, right? They're always like, all right, hey, Sahara, can you support? And I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to support. I can't play Rhaegar. And they're like, I'll support. And it works every time. But it's true, I can't play Rhaegar. I should learn Rhaegar. But, yeah. So,
My Rhaegar used to be good, and then they reworked him, and now like everything's off. I can't. I need to play him more to get the timings back down.
yeah. Dr. Nice, I would say Zul is another hero that has power on certain maps with certain teammates in comps. This game doesn't have heroes except for some exceptions where it's like, this hero is just always great, you should always pick it, you know. Zul definitely has a good place in certain maps like Blackheart's Bay or Tomb of the Spider Queen, where wave clear is a very high priority. So, yeah. I fielded a question. It's like I was finally a guest on my own show. Yeah.
Zul is just really good on any map where you can rotate between two lanes. So all you have to do is do the math. Like, literally go into custom, clear a wave, rotate to the other lane. Did you miss any soak? Zul's good on that map.
Zul can work here, yeah.
The primary issue that Zul has is a lack of mobility. So he's really vulnerable to getting displaced and then focused, which means even though he's good on those maps, he's bad against certain heroes. And the Diablo, really common in the meta right now. Diablo has 2 displacements in his base kit.
Yep. Don't want that. Yeah.
Kind of scary.
3 at 16.
But I think, I would say Dragonshire and Dragonshire, Blackhearts, and Tomb of the Spider Queen are his top 3 maps. But the primary reason we don't see him in competitive is because he has to frontline and he lacks an escape, which is just a really scary position to be in.
He's vulnerable, yeah.
He can't really be the bruiser, and we also are currently in a meta where usually the bruiser is your solo laner, and Zul's not a solo laner. That's not what he's good for. So that's why we haven't been seeing them. But I think we'll be seeing him on Tomb at least in a couple of the upcoming games, just because his push is pretty intense, and he pairs well with certain other heroes that are going to start coming into the meta a little bit.
Yep, agreed. All right. Well, I think that's about it for the Nexus Drafthouse tonight. We found out where you can find CavalierGuest at CavalierGuest on Twitter, and same as his Twitch, twitch.tv/CavalierGuest. Found out what he's going to be doing, and we found out a lot about recent drafts. We've got another weekend of games coming up from the HEC, so that's one thing that's nice about this show is I'll pretty much always have a resource now for games. Because when Dreadnought was coming on, it was like, no one's played in a month and a half. What do we do? So we did Gold Club.
Those are some good drafts. Some of those drafts were like intensely good.
Yeah, if you have a little time, I would check out the episode. I think you'll find it very interesting.
I will do that.
Yeah. And I think that's about it. So thanks for tuning in to the Nexus Drafthouse. You can find me at Storm Legacy Team on Twitter. I do recommend following it. That is where I make announcements and memes. So it'll be great. And we'll be back next week. I think we're back on the. I think we'll be back on the Blizz schedule next week. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.